Hi everyone, Elsie Jensen here. Today we are going to make some beef and barley soup with some oatmeal cookies and a grilled cheese using some of our leftover sourdough from last night. So let's start. I have this nice beautiful chuck roast. What we're going to do is we're going to cube it up, take out the fat, and then we'll sear it off and then we'll remove that from the soup so that we can kind of saute up our vegetables. So I'm going to first start by making nice kind of big slices down with my cleaver over our chuck roast. And then I'm going to cut that big vein of fat out because we are going to be searing this off. With a nice oven roast, like roasting in the oven, that fat will render down and make your meat tender. But in a soup or a stew, it's just going to get chewy. So you want to make sure you cut it out. Okay. So right now I have about 2 pounds of chuck roast, but I'm sure by the time I get done, trimming off all the fat, I will be probably down to, a little less than 2 pounds. And we're going to do nice bite-sized pieces. And we'll sear these off. We're going to give them a good season, and then we'll remove them from the heat so that we don't make them too tough in the cooking process. I find with chuck roast, it kind of goes through the stages of you can do a quick sear on it and you'll have a nice, lovely, tender piece of meat. Or if you cook it too long, it will be tough. But then if you cook it for an even longer amount of time, it gets tender again. So we're going to do that kind of quick sear on it so it's nice and tender, and then we'll have it added back into our soup, which will prevent it from getting too tough but remain nice and tender. So we're going to just cut off again some of these big ribbons of fat on there so that it's not super chewy. Luckily with chuck roast, you can actually almost peel the fat away because it is very marbled in it, which makes it a little bit easier to trim up. So it's not too difficult to trim up. Cube these guys off. I don't want to leave my pieces of meat too big because, again, this is a soup, so you want to be able to eat your meat without having to get like a fork and a knife out. Yeah. And then this is kind of like a quicker version of a barley soup. So we are going to be using quick barley instead of like a pearled barley, which typically takes like an hour and a half to cook up to get to tender. And so doing the quick barley just means that the oats have already been steamed so that they soften up much faster, but essentially gives you the same taste and final product of it. Okay, and then we're going to make up some oatmeal cookies because it just feels like an oatmeal cookie day on there. And these are like our family favorite oatmeal cookies. So I think Torn will be excited because he loves these cookies when we get home. And yeah, so let's get these cubed up. Again, not too big. We're going to season. We're going to do a really simple seasoning today. Just bay leaves, a little bit of fresh thyme, oregano, garlic, black pepper. Just simple. I don't want to overcomplicate the soup with too many spices on here because it is just a traditional base to it. We will use a little bit of kitchen bouquet in it, which is a browning seasoning, which is made from like roasted veggies, which adds this beautiful color to the broth, which I love to use in kind of beef stews. Here we go. Let's get this all trimmed up there. You see, it just slides right off. I'm aiming for like, dice-sized pieces, nothing too big. Let's get here. Just a few more pieces to trim up. And then we'll be ready to season these guys and saute them off. And then I'm going to use my cast iron coated Dutch oven today instead of my enamel one because we are going to be kind of searing off this meat, and I want that nice kind of sear on it, like that cooked texture that cast iron gives, just a little bit nicer than the enamel coating. Let's get that fat out. I was excited when I went to the store. My daughter asked me to take her to the store early this morning before school because she had a friend's birthday. And I was like, oh, I'm going to go check, from there. Let me see if they have some chuck roast. And it was my lucky day because the chuck roast was like on sale. So I was very happy. I walked away with 3 chuck roasts. So we're going to be having pot roast this week and maybe something else. But when you get a good sale, it's kind of hard to say no. And I will say I don't ever really go to the grocery store on a Thursday morning at 7 a.m. Okay. We've got these all trimmed up for the most part. Again, you just want to get most of the fat off. It's okay if there's a couple little veining in there. It's just the big chunks of like the white fat that isn't going to be nice in our soup. Give a quick wash. And we're going to season these guys up for it. Now we're just going to really kind of do a kind of a little dry seasoning on here. Just to kind of get that nice little crispy sear on it. So we're going to start with onion powder. We're going to use a good amount of onion powder, about maybe 1.5 tablespoons, but enough to really coat each piece. There we go. And then we're going to use some dried oregano.
Yo, question. How big was each chuck roast?
So this chuck roast was 2.5 pounds, and then I trimmed it down. So I've probably got around 2 pounds left. So we're going to put in about 1.5 teaspoons of dried oregano. We're going to do a little spritz of garlic salt, probably just a shake over about 1 teaspoon. And I'm going to grab my pepper because I must have left it. And we're going to do about 1 teaspoon, maybe like 1/2 teaspoon of black pepper. I'll use a little bit more later.
How'd the family like the pumpkin sauce with the pasta?
It was delicious. It was all eaten up last night, so no leftovers whatsoever. So my parents, unfortunately, will miss out. But it was delicious. And of course, like I was telling last night, how I was going to have to grate the cheese over Lena's things. It was a long time. And I was like, okay, I'm cutting you off. But she's like, you missed the noodle here. You didn't put all of it in. And I'm like, but it was delicious. I will say there was nothing left over. I think I felt like the kids were going to lick the pan clean from it. So again, another nice thing. And the great thing about it, I mean, it was a whole cup of pumpkin puree in there, and that the kids, I never blatantly go out and tell them what is exactly in it because I always want them to, have an open mind or whatnot. And they all just loved it. Nobody commented or anything like that. But it's just a great way to sneak in some veggies, and it just added this just great flavor to it. Okay, we've got these all coated. Once my Dutch oven gets nice and warm, we're going to start searing off our meat in there. I'm not going to crowd it all because I want a really great sear on each side of it. So we'll do it in batches. But while we're doing that, we're going to make our grilled or our cookies. Just going to wash my hands before I head over there. So we're going to make some oatmeal cookies, just classic oatmeal, no raisins. Sometimes I add chocolate chips. I never add raisins in. Nobody here likes raisins. I don't mind a raisin in there. It's not my favorite thing, but I'm kind of under the belief it like ruins it. Now, I do love a good chocolate chip in cookies, but Torn does not like chocolate chips in his oatmeal cookies, so I always just typically make them plain on there. So we're going to start with 2.5 cups of room temperature butter. And make sure it's room temperature, otherwise you're going to have to work really hard to cream it in, and nobody wants to do that. I'm using my stand mixer here, but you can always use a hand mixer if you wanted to. I just find stand mixers or the paddle mixers just mix a little bit easier. They cream a little bit better.
Have you ever done a brown butter cookie mixture?
Yes, I actually made some brown butter pumpkin cookies not too long ago, and I have brown buttered sugar cookies, and I have a brown butter chocolate chip cookie with sea salt, which is absolutely delicious on there. And I love a good brown butter, especially sugar cookies. They're really good. Actually, and then I did a brown butter pumpkin chocolate chip cookie. So I kind of had a spice cookie and a chocolate chip cookie. I used it. I do love a brown butter, but it is one of those steps that adds like a little bit of time because, you know, you've got to brown the butter, which can take like 20 minutes to get it to that perfect kind of golden brown on there. And then you have to wait for it to cool. So it's when if I think about it in the hand, I do it. But a lot of times I'll just whip out some of my recipes that I know I can cook up and make theirs. Like, you know, this one's a nice one because I can prep the dough up and I can bake it right away. But like my chocolate chip cookies, I always make sure my dough chills for a couple of hours before baking them up because it gives you just a perfect chewy cookie. There we go. So we've got our kind of our first batch in. We'll let these cook for about, 30, a minute, and then we'll kind of flip it over. I want them to be a kind of like a nice medium rare because they will sit and cook a little bit more. Okay, we've got 1.5 cups of butter, and then we're going to add 3/4 cups of brown sugar and 1/2 cup of granulated sugar. So we want to make sure our brown sugar is firmly packed. This is a 1/2 cup, so I'm going to do one of these plus 1/2 of it. And then we're going to add in our granulated sugar, 1/2 cup of that. And you kind of need the mixture of both of these for it. It gives you just that perfect balance in the sweetness department paired with kind of the molasses base to it. So 1/2 cup of granulated. And then we're going to cream these two guys together. While those are creaming, let's get to our meat and flip it again. We kind of cube them nice and small, so they're going to cook up pretty fast. We'll flip them over, sear them off. It doesn't matter if they're not completely cooked through because we will be throwing them back into our soup, but I'm aiming right now for a perfect kind of medium rare so that I don't have to leave them in my soup too long after we cook it. And this nice, you can see it has a nice little kind of crusty edge on it. That's from the onion powder. It gives it a really lovely sear on it.
How much brown sugar went with the cookies?
3/4 cup of brown sugar. So 1/2 cup of regular sugar, 3/4 cup of brown sugar. Let me get a spatula. I got a piece of butter stuck in here. So let me just pat it down and we'll get that creamed in. There we go. And again, room temperature butter creams better than cold butter. So I always say use it if you can. We're going to use 1 egg. So let me grab my egg out of the fridge here. So just 1 egg in this cookie mixture. Apparently, there we go. It was like cracking all the way around, but it wasn't letting me pull it apart. We'll cream that egg into our butter and our sugars. And while that's creaming, we can get our first batch of our meat out. So I'm going to give it a quick stir. Turn that off. And again, I want these to be like a nice medium rare, little bit of pinkish red in the middle of it because I want them to stay nice and tender, and then we will finish them off, when we throw them back into our soup at the end in that nice warm broth. But perfect right now. There we go. We're going to get our next batch in. We want all of these delicious little drippings on the bottom of our pan. That's going to add all this great flavor to our broth, our stew kind of soup base. And we're going to saute our veggies in there as well. I'm going to throw in just a smidge more olive oil, like 1/2 teaspoon more. And don't worry if you're getting spices to stick to the bottom of your pan. When we deglaze it with our broth later, all of those will come up and they'll add just great flavor. They're just going to kind of caramelize in the meat drippings. Okay, I'm going to have to do 3 batches, but be perfect anyways. Okay, I'm going to take my spatula here and just press all of this butter and sugar mixture down because it always likes to stick. And I said, it's really important that you do this throughout the process so that when you get to the end, you don't have like butter that isn't mixed in or bits that aren't mixed in. Give it a good slide up. And now we're going to add in vanilla extract. We're going to add in we'll do our spices, our vanilla, and our salt. Get all of these things up here. That way I can do my vanilla last so it's not wet. We're going to do.
You have a question? What if you don't have a stand mixer?
You can use a hand mixer as well. Really make sure that your butter is room temperature. Otherwise, it's really hard to cream it. But a stand mixer will work just fine with it. Or a hand mixer. I just find stand mixers are a little bit easier. We're going to do a teaspoon of salt, a teaspoon of baking soda, get this in here. There we go. A heaping teaspoon of cinnamon. And then it's 1/4 of a teaspoon, so just a little bit of nutmeg. Now, I know nutmeg can be a polarizing spice for some. I feel like this gives that missing flavor in the oatmeal cookie. You just need a little bit. It's pretty strong. So 1/4 of a teaspoon of nutmeg, and then we're going to do a teaspoon of vanilla extract. There we go. And now we're going to mix all of our spices into our butter and our sugar mixture. There we go. And we're going to flip our meat over here. Get it seared off on the other side. Again, we're getting this nice, beautiful crusting on it. That's going to add so much flavor and texture to the end product of our stew. There we go. Now I'm using a chuck roast. I find chuck roast is really tender and is just delicious in soups, but you could also use the stew cuts of meat, which are typically just random leftover cuts that the butcher has that he puts in a package. But I do love a great chuck roast for this. Okay, let's give this a quick whip one more time. I'm going to push down again the butter from the sides. Then we are going to add in 1.5 cups of flour. We'll mix that in, and then we'll add in 3 cups of oats. And we're going to be using old-fashioned oats because they work the best. In a pinch, you can definitely use quick oats, but old-fashioned is what I recommend. And never, ever, ever use steel-cut oats because those do not get tender or cook up, and so you'll have really crunchy cookies. Okay. Let's add in our flour. We're going to do 1.5 cups of flour and just good old all-purpose flour. So 1.5 cups. We're going to cream that in. While we do that, we can take out our meat for our second batch here. Beautiful. Again, nice, aiming for a kind of nice pinkish red in the middle of it for a medium rare on it. So it just needs to cook up a smidge when we throw it in our stew later. Okay. And again, before I put this last batch in, I'm going to put about 1/2 teaspoon of oil in here just to make sure I have that nice kind of oil base to sear them off on so none of my spices really burn up. Let's get this last batch in here. Beautiful. And again, don't overcrowd it. Do it in batches. You might think, oh, do you have to do it in batches? It is going to give you a much better cook on your meat where they're each getting that individual heat from the bottom of the pan, which will prevent it from just seizing up and leaking out a bunch of juices. It's going to allow you to get a really good sear on it. Okay, let's check out our cookies over here. We've got our flour mixed into our sugar mixture with all of our spices. And now we're going to add in 3 cups of oats. Again, old-fashioned oats work the best, but you can always use quick oats. So 1, 2, 3. We'll mix these guys up. And voila. Now, if you wanted to add in chocolate chips or raisins or craisins or any dried fruit, now would be the time to do it. Just mix it in, quickly. I always do that last on there. I'm just going to push everything down and give it one more mix. Pop my thing back in. And then our cookie base is done. Beautiful. Okay. Scrape these guys all off. We don't want any of it to go to waste. And I think the nice thing about these cookies are you can bake them right away. They're not a chill one that needs to chill, which is nice. And that's because that oats kind of help absorb some of that moisture in it and just allows it to cook up quickly without, giving you a dry cookie or a crispy cookie. Beautiful. Flip these guys over. We'll sear off that last little bit on this side. Perfect. Now I do have my oven preheated to 375 degrees. So you cook these at just a slightly higher temperature than like a base cookie, but only for 8 minutes. So they cook up fairly quickly. I'm going to prep up my onion right here so that when we take out this next set of batch of meat, I can throw in my onion here to saute up and start getting caramelized on it, get our base for it. Okay. I'm just going to do kind of a small dice, not a micro dice, but just a slightly smaller on here so you have nice little bits of veggies everywhere. We're going to be using celery, carrots, tomatoes, some garlic, and then, of course, our barley in here. But a really simple base to it, like a beef stew, a very, simple base to it. Beautiful. I think these are perfect. So we've got all of our seared off chuck roast here, which is just going to be so delicious in our soup. And the searing off is just going to give it such a nice texture in there, especially if you don't have time to use like regular barley, which takes a long time to cook. Searing this off, you don't have to stew your soup forever. We're going to add in about a teaspoon of olive oil to the bottom of our pan, and we're going to sear off we're going to saute our onions here. So just one yellow onion that we diced up. Let me get a spoon. Get that onion off my hands before I start rolling out cookies. There we go. I'm going to get a little spatula and give this a nice little toss in here. Now, don't worry if you have little spices and bits stuck to your bottom of your pan. When we deglaze with both the tomatoes and the broth, that will come up, and that will add just this wonderful flavor to our stew. We're going to let that saute. And while we're waiting, we can roll out our cookies. Now these cookies stay kind of like a little dome type things. They flatten out just a little bit, but they don't spread out too much, which is nice. They make for a really delicious chewy oatmeal cookie that I love. So I'm just gonna grab, I'm gonna say my guesstimation is these are ping pong ball size bits of dough.
That's bigger than ping pong.
I don't think it's bigger than a ping pong. I think these are perfect ping pong sized. There we go. And we're gonna just roll them out. This dough has a little bit of stick to it, but it's not so sticky that you can't work with it. I find just you can do the spoon and spoon method, or you can even use a cookie, like a cookie scoop. I find just using my hands works the best. It gives you a nice kind of uniform round little circle, so it makes them look a little bit nicer. There we go. It's got a, first part is resisting the urge to eat the dough. I do love good cookie dough. All of my kids, they're all like, oh, can I help you make cookies? As in, can I help you eat the cookie dough? And then I'm always like, well, we got to save some cookie dough to bake up some cookies. And they're all like, why? The dough is so good. Okay. And this batch, it makes a good amount of oatmeal cookies. On here, I should be able to get 2 trayfuls with about 20 cookies on each tray. So this gives you a good amount of cookies. Now, I don't make super huge cookies. I know like those huge cookies are like really big. I like smaller cookies that you can, take a snack on, eat a couple, feel more like a treat versus the commitment of a big cookie. Although when I do make my copycat crumble cookies, now those are big cookies. Here we go. Get this last 4 rolled out. And then these will be ready to bake off in just a second. And there we go. So we've got my 20 cookies ready. I'm going to wash my hands. I'll give our onions a quick stir. And then we're going to pop these in the oven to bake. And these take hardly any time to bake. And you don't want to overcook them. Our onions are getting a nice, beautiful caramelization on them. Okay. So we've got our oatmeal cookies. Now, if you wanted to add raisins or chocolate chips or any dried fruit, you definitely could. But we like them just plain Jane here. We're going to bake these at 375 for 8 minutes. Don't overbake. They're going to seem like they're underdone when you take them out. They are not. They continue to cook on the tray and they'll firm up to be the perfect chewy cookie. Worst thing is an overbaked cookie. So trust it. The time on this one. This is the one I will say cookies are the things that you definitely go by time on versus like look. Okay. I've got our onion sauteing here. Let's get our garlic in and then we're going to get some carrots and celery in. I'm going to use, we don't need that. I've got this, Hulk size garlic clove. So this is going to be about a little over, like a teaspoon and a half once it's mixed up. You can definitely use garlic too if you want. And here, I've been loving this garlic in a bag that's peeled. I feel like it has just a slightly nicer flavor than garlic. Garlic is more acidic than the peeled garlic here, and it's easier because you don't have to peel it. And that's my least favorite thing with working with garlic. So we're going to mince this up. We'll throw it in and we're going to let it saute for just about a minute or so. Garlic goes from being beautiful to burnt really fast. So just keep your eye on it. Keep your temperature down a little bit lower so you don't burn it. There we go. We'll get a couple little more minces over this. We're going to add this into our pan here. Let's give it a nice little coating in the onions and that bit of that oil. And we're going to let it kind of toast up. And I am heating or cooking these over a nice like 4, so a pretty low temperature here, not super high. I'm going to grab my peeler out, and we're going to add in some carrots to our stew. So we're going to peel off the outer part because that is just dry and has more of an earthy flavor. Once you peel it off, you're going to have that lovely tender carrot with that nice sweet flavor in it. So always peel it. Don't think you're saving yourself time. It will taste better if you peel it. Here we go. And then we're going to just have these. I might quarter some of the big ones because I don't want super huge pieces of like carrots in here. Again, this is a stew, so I like all of my vegetables to be slightly smaller so that you can get multiple veggies in every bite and really get the whole cornucopia of deliciousness.
Could you use baby carrots?
You could definitely use baby carrots. You're going to have to chop them up too because those are still a little bit big, but yes, you can do it. I always buy my veggies in bulk from like Costco, so having them like this, then I can use them in multiple ways, but baby carrots work just as well. We'll cut off the tips, the tops and the tips. These little smaller bits, we're going to go right here. I'm going to give my garlic and my onions a nice little stir. And then once we've got our carrots chopped up, we're going to throw them in there. I'm going to cut my fatter ones in half because, again, smaller little bits just make for the best. Cut this guy. I'm going to get this first batch in going. Give them a nice stir. And this was, I mean, although I was using 5 carrots, this is really like 3 big carrots on here. They were kind of small. So do a nice simple dice. Add those guys in. And then we're going to do our celery. And take off the tops, you know, where they pre-cut them. I always cut those off because they dry out and they get really stringy. And then I'm also going to kind of cut my celery down the middle so I don't have, again, super big pieces of celery. I like the smaller. It will let out its flavor faster, cook up nicer, won't be as stringy. And this is probably, if we're using full-size celery stalks, like 2 to 3 full-size celery stalks. And we'll get these in there to start cooking up as well. Give this a nice spin around. Now we're going to add our celery in. Here we go. We'll coat all of this up. Let it saute for a minute while we prep our tomatoes that we will throw in as well. We're also going to be using some tomato paste and then some fresh herbs. And then we'll add our broth in and our barley. Let that stew for a little bit. We are using quick barley, so you don't have to wait as long to, cook it. Regular barley can take anywhere between an hour and a half to get soft. Quick barley is like 10 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes, depending on how high you're cooking it. So it'll be perfect time for it to stew up and everything. Get our tomatoes diced up. I am using fresh tomatoes because I love fresh tomatoes, but you can also just use a can of diced tomatoes on here. I've got 4 kind of small tomatoes, that equal kind of like a can of diced tomatoes. One was from my garden, the nice little yellow one. I think we're going to have some fried green tomatoes here in a little bit because there are some that just don't want to turn green or red. Okay. Let's give this a nice stir. Before we add our tomatoes in, we're going to add in some spices. We're going to add in a little bit of dried oregano, about a teaspoon. About a half a teaspoon of black pepper. Two bay leaves. This bay leaf still has the branch on it. There we go. And then we're going to give this a quick stir, and then we're going to add in some tomato paste and some Worcestershire sauce. So for our tomato paste, we're going to use about a heaping spoonful. It's going to be kind of close to a tablespoon. This is going to add just a nice acidity to the base of our stew, and it's just going to be really lovely. So let's give this a nice mix in. Heat it up with those spices. It's just going to really bring out that flavor. And let's go grab our cookies. I'm going to just give a nice drizzle of Worcestershire sauce first so it can kind of heat up. You want about a teaspoon and a half to a tablespoon. Okay, let's get our oatmeal cookies out of the oven here. Again, 8 minutes. Those should have these nice little domes on them, but they will kind of flatten down more when you they cool. Beautiful. So here are our oatmeal cookies. I accidentally touched one when I grabbed it, but perfect and gorgeous. Let them cool. Don't try to move them or anything for at least 5 minutes. As I say, they continue to cook on the pan. And so you need that residual resting time from that hot pan to get them all the way there. But they are the best chewy, delicious oatmeal cookies. That mix of cinnamon or with a little pinch of nutmeg just does wonders. Okay, let's add in our tomatoes. Here we go.
This is an interesting question. Would you ever consider doing like a cooking Q&A live where people come like a Thanksgiving emergency question for cooking?
Yeah, I think that could work. I think that would be fun. And hopefully I'd be able to answer everything. But yeah, I mean, I always like to help out and answer any questions that I know of. Yeah. Okay, let's got our tomatoes in. So this is like a can of diced tomatoes, but you could definitely, I'm using fresh, so but it's about that amount. We're gonna let it cook up for just a second. And now we're gonna add in our broth base for this. So I'm using water with beef bouillon because we have beef in our soup. We're going to add in about a cup first. And just kind of mix that in just nicely, kind of scrape. This is where I was talking about any of those spices when we were sauteing the meat. Just scrape your spoon across the bottom of your pan. It's going to lift them up, and that is going to add so much flavor into the base of our broth. I'm going to add in another cup now. Mix it nice and slowly. I can turn up my heat now to about a 6. Push all my little veggies down.
Do you have a plan for dinner yet?
Nope. I've got to think about it. I've got my plan for lunch. I'm not sure. I'll have to see how I feel. I do have a pork roast, so I might actually do, I think I might do that. Pork, I might put it in my Instapot and do a slow cooker on it and do like carnitas or something like that, Mexican or whatnot. I do have some avocados that I want to use up. So maybe something along the line there, but don't hold me to it.
Could you use ground beef instead of steak for this?
You could definitely use ground beef instead of it. Now, it'd be a very different kind of texture and flavor to it. For this, I'm using a chuck roast, so not steak, but ground beef can definitely be a more affordable version of it as well. I would just try to do like when you're cooking it up, try to do it in big chunks instead of breaking it up too much. Okay, we're going to add in a nice big scoop of our beef bouillon here. This is going to give the saltiness to our soup as well as that nice kind of beefy flavor. I'll let this mix in, and then we're going to add in our barley.
And how much water and all?
That was 4 cups of water. So, and I always find that that is perfect for this Dutch oven and making essentially like a 4 to 5 like serving soup, which I think is perfect for lunchtime. Let's get this mixed in. Now I'm going to have a little bit of a taste of the broth, see where we're at. Perfect. I don't think I need to add anything else to it. So we're going to bring the temperature up, and then I'm going to add in our barley. And again, I'm using quick barley. Let me get a little measuring cup here for it. But we are going to use about 3/4 of a cup. I don't want to put too much in. I might actually only use a half a cup because I don't want it to be super like barley-ish. Think of it like rice. You don't want to put too much rice in or it will, scoop up.
Question. Is there a specific reason that sometimes you add bouillon to the water and sometimes you do it straight to the soup?
If my water is hot, I'll add the bouillon in it for like when I'm making gravy. I need the bouillon already mixed into the broth or something like that, or in a pasta sauce where I don't have a whole big pot of liquid to dissolve it in. Now with soups, I have a lot and that heat will dissolve it well, but if it's going into a sauce or a gravy, it's not going to dissolve as well. So it's kind of more of how getting the flavor through it so we don't have like big chunks of it. So I think I'll do a little bit more. We'll do 2/3 of a cup. Now, this is quick barley, which means it's already been steamed and dried, which means it cooks a lot faster than regular barley. Regular barley or pearl barley can take like an hour to an hour and a half to get tender. This one will cook up things. It will also expand and get a little bit bigger. It's going to look, if you've never worked with barley before, it's going to look kind of like oats or oatmeal in there, but it's got a nice nutty flavor to it. Okay, while we're waiting, let's work on our grilled cheese so that we can have that to dip into our soup while that's simmering. Let me just slide this guy out of the way. He's so heavy. So last night we baked up a loaf of sourdough bread. So we're going to use some of our sourdough to make some grilled cheeses because I just love a good soup and sandwich, kind of like soup and sandwich girl, soup and salad. I feel like they go so well together. Okay. Let's get this guy trimmed up. I always find it, when we first bake it, I never trim up my loaf very even. So I always have to kind of even it out just a little bit. It's always at an angle.
Have you ever made a dark chocolate sourdough loaf?
I have made one. We actually, not too long ago, I'm trying to think, I made a chocolate starter. So I used that in my sourdough loaves, and I made several dark chocolate sourdough loaves. One of my favorite sourdough loaves that you make is like a chocolate cherry with chocolate chunks in it and walnuts. Oh, it's so good. I absolutely love that version. And then I made this really good chocolate one with almonds and marzipan, or like an almond paste in it, and it was so good. Okay, let's make I'm gonna just make enough to make 2 really big sandwiches, which are equal to 4 sandwiches because we'll cut them in half. But it's easier to do 2 big ones and cut them in half at the end than to do the other ones. Got a little bit of bread for later on here. Okay. Let me give our soup and stew a little bit. We will throw our meat in here, but I do like the stew to cook a little bit because we already kind of cooked that all the way through some. So beautiful. And we have such a nice colored broth, and that's kind of from our tomato paste in here and that beef bouillon. It gives it a really rich color to it, which is lovely. Okay, for our grilled cheeses, let's get some softened butter. I'm going to turn on my pan, start heating it up. That way we can kind of toast it up. It's a good thing I cut my bread all the way through here. There we go. And the cameraman is eating a hot cookie. He didn't wait the full time for it. Are they cool enough? Are they delicious? Good. Always, got to keep an eye on the cameraman. He steals a lot of food. I feel like I should garnish his wages for it. There we go. So we've got butter. You just need butter on one side. Always pick the prettiest cut side. That way you don't have too many ridges on it because you want it to lie as flat as possible on the pan here. Let's see, this one looks nice right here. And then we're going to use some Gouda, and then I have a mystery cheese that I'm going to taste, and I tell you what it is. I think it's a Manchego, but I'm not 100% sure because it's out of its wrapper and it's in there, but it will be delicious. Mystery cheese. I always, it's always fun. Got to have a little, a little chaos in your life at times. So we're going to use Gouda first because who doesn't love Gouda? And it's a great cheese that melts really nicely. So it's perfect to use in grilled cheeses. And we're getting down to my last little bit of it. Peel off that wax. Here we go. So when you're making grilled cheeses, you always you can add some cheeses that aren't as great of melters, but you want, again, for that really good cheese bowl, you want ones that are semi-soft to not super firm and hard because you want them to be able to get a good cheese bowl. Here we go. Look at this, kind of perfect. I used up just the last little bit of this. And now we have and I'm pretty sure because it looks like a Manchego on here. Now, I always like to just, instead of cutting through the middle, I cut from the side down right here, and that just kind of makes it easier because my blade. But it is pretty much a soft cheese, but again, yeah, it's a Manchego, which is a Spanish cheese that is delicious. It's a little bit, a little kind of tartness that is similar to, I'm trying to see what it's similar to. I don't know. It's just a delicious cheese, guys. It pairs really well with fruits, I find. Okay. Beautiful. Let's get these guys on here.
So what's your favorite cheese?
My favorite cheese is probably Gouda. I absolutely love it. It's got this nice creaminess to it that is just amazing. And I love Edam. I feel like those are my favorite cheeses, kind of that semi-soft, kind of the white cheeses. And then I do love a good cheddar, but Gouda, Edam, those all hit a little bit nicer. There we go. Now, cheeses that I don't like are provolone and Swiss because I feel like they have no flavor. Beautiful. Nice, lovely broth on it. Let me grab my cookie cooling rack out. We're going to smooth our cookies off. And then, while our grilled cheeses are cooking up, we can whip up another batch to roll these out. There we go. Oops. Almost lost my oats. Okay. We're going to slide our cookies off and let them cool. I'll grab a spatula here. Again, remember you want to let them sit for at least a few minutes before you take them off because they need to firm up. But I'll show you how. They've got this perfect kind of golden brown at the bottom. I don't even need a spatula. We're going to put them on here. Because when I bake my cookies, which unless I'm doing like a huge cookie bake-a-thon for like Christmas or whatnot, I always just bake on the top rack and I do multiple top rack batches because the top rack always bakes the best. There we go. And then got them nice and delicious. So these again are just our classic oatmeal cookie with a little bit of cinnamon and nutmeg in it. Just is perfect and delicious. Just a teeny bit of nutmeg. I know nutmeg is one of those ones that people, you either love it or you hate it, but it just works well with these. Gives you that missing thing. Flip this over. We've got our start on it. We're going to do a half and half, kind of toast it up till that butter is melted and it's warm, and then we will do that final cook on both sides to crisp it up. Let's move our cheeses and stuff out of the way so we can roll up our next batch of cookies and get those baking. Now I'm thinking, because I have a small batch, I think I might add some chocolate chips in here because I haven't done an oatmeal chocolate chip one, and this is a great way to do it. So we'll add in some chocolate chips while we're finishing up our soup and stew and get those. So let me grab a bag because I realize we don't have to do all in one. So since it's only a half batch, you don't need a whole lot of chocolate chips. We're going to add in just about a half a cup. We'll mix this up in here.
Can you go over what's in the soup?
Yes. So we have for our soup, we have a lovely, this is going to be a beef and barley. We sauteed off our beef. Here we have our carrots, onions, celery, garlic, tomatoes, and then our barley in here cooking up, as well as beef bouillon, bay leaves in there. We're going to add in our stew meat here in just a second. I want our barley to get a chance to get nice and tender before we pop it in there. It doesn't need long to cook because remember we seared it all off beforehand. So here we go. So we've got our chocolate chips mixed into our now. So we can do a double batch, 2 different flavors, 1 base. We'll roll these guys off on here. Let's check. These are going to be cooked up here in just a second for this. And I will say these cookies, I said, you get a good amount of oatmeal cookies out of this. Now you can go, sometimes I change it up and I change out the cinnamon for pumpkin pie spice. There's a lot of different things that you can do to add slightly different flavors. If you want a more like a Christmas flavor, you could sub that nutmeg in here for a little bit of cloves to give you that really kind of Christmas spice flavor to it. We'll just grab a little ball here. We'll roll it up. And then I'm going to check my grilled cheeses, see if they're ready to flip on there, because we should be done with everything in the next few minutes here because we're on the final leg. Get these guys going. So this is, I will say, this is my favorite with oatmeal cookies. I love a good chocolate chip in it. There's this, and I think it's a chain bakery, but I absolutely love it. Let me get this down. It is Great Harvest, and they make this oatmeal chocolate chip cookie that is just amazing on here. Let's grab my spatula. Beautiful. Now we're going to do our final toasting up on each side of our grilled cheeses. And now, before we roll up the last bit of our cookies, I'm going to add in my stew meat so it can stew for the last few minutes. So pour it all in here. This is our seared off beef, our chuck roast. Put it in here with any little residual juices or whatnot, and put it all in our soup here to stew up. There we go. Beautiful. You can see how much the barley has grown in size too in here. So just the benefit of using a quick barley is you don't have to stew your soup for ages. Okay, let's get these last ones rolled out. On here. And this is such a simple, I will say, this is the nice thing about this. It's such a simple, like easy oatmeal cookie to make that you can bake up right away. I do have a couple that you have to chill the dough on, which they're all add, different complexities and whatnot when you chill dough. But it's always nice to have a cookie that you can make and bake at the same time. And I haven't made these in a while. I've made so many fall cookies recently, a lot of pumpkin flavored cookies because, it's the fall. You've got to do your pumpkin here. But change it up. Okay. This one is going to be a chocolate chippy cookie. I think I have enough for one more cookie in here. Again, these bake at 375 for 8 minutes. You don't want to over bake them. Kind of that perfect 8 minutes gives you that just beautiful. Take a little bit off because it looks like I have enough for one more. And then we're going to flip our grilled cheeses here and we will be on our last leg. Okay. Let's flip our grilled cheese. Hopefully it has that nice little toasting on it. And then we can finish off. Beautiful. Okay. So let's go put our cookies in the oven. We'll set our timer for 8 minutes, although I probably will definitely not keep you guys here because we are almost done to serve up. But you guys will see this, and then we'll finish off our soup and our sandwich. Okay, 8 minutes. Again, don't overcook them. They're gonna look a little like they could cook a little bit longer or more golden. Don't. You wanna leave them to be perfect and beautiful there. Okay, as our grilled cheeses are finishing up for that last bit, we are gonna throw in some fresh thyme as the final ingredient in our soup. In there, where you don't need to mince it up, all you wanna do is really just take off the leaves and kind of put them in here. Just a little bit of it. This is going to add just some brightness that happens, that just pops up. If you don't have any fresh thyme, you can always use parsley or a little bit of green onion as well. You could throw in some dried thyme as well in a pinch there. But this just adds, again, a little bit of freshness. And I had just a little bit left. So I was like, this is perfect. Thyme is a pretty delicate leaf on here. You do want to make sure you kind of pull them off. They're not the easiest one to work with, but the flavor is lovely. So we'll put in our fresh thyme. Beautiful. Give this a nice little stir. And it's about, I think I have probably, enough in here to get about a half a teaspoon to a teaspoon of fresh thyme. So just again.
And why do you put it in last?
Because I want the flavor to be really bright instead of subdumo, so a little bit stronger when you get it on there. Now, there's plenty of times where I'll put the spices in sooner, but for this, I want it to be more of a mellow, like bright kind of full intensity when you hit it. Okay, let's taste this one last time. Perfect. Beautiful. Okay. Ooh, that was hot. Let me grab our plates and our bowl. We'll get our cute little cauldron here. Get ready to serve up. Get our soup over here. Give it a good stir. Now, I kind of kept base vegetables, but if you wanted to throw in another green vegetable, spinach or kale would be fabulous in this soup as well. And let me grab a cutting board to cut our sandwich. Maybe a little overkill on the cutting board here. Okay, turn this, guys, off. Beautiful. Okay. For lunch today, we have our grilled cheese on homemade sourdough bread. We've got our nice Gouda and Manchego cheese. And we will be serving this with our homemade beef and barley soup that is full of chunks of chuck roast, carrots, celery, a beautiful sauce using tomatoes and tomato paste. And then, of course, we use some quick barley to get that nice, delicious oats to it. And we'll be serving it for 2 oatmeal cookies for a little bit of sweetness, but just the perfect kind of lunch for, the nice cool weather that is coming in. Well, guys, thanks again for joining us here. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I try to do live cooking shows every single day, kind of show you what we're making for our family and hopefully teach you guys something along the way. Again, we do upload all of our videos to the link on our page. So if you ever want to recreate any of our recipes at home, you can just go to that link, search for what we made. So our beef and barley soup and our oatmeal cookies, and you can always watch and cook along with me again. We also have a link to our Amazon storefront that has all of our different cooking gear and gadgets in it. I've got my, KitchenAid stand mixer, my knives, my cutting boards, all the different things I use in the kitchen I have in there for you guys to check out. But again, thank you so much for joining us here today. Don't forget to like and subscribe.